Welcome. Today is Tuesday, the 22nd of December, 9:45 a.m. And we have a full quorum for our Community Reinvestment Agency for Weber County. Seated to my immediate left is Commissioner Scott Jenkins, and to my immediate right is Commissioner Gage Frohr. I'm Commissioner Harvey. We appreciate you being here. Commissioners, our consent item is a request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on November 3rd, 2020. Many of you will remember that meeting where we did a little bit of business. Do you have any questions or corrections on those minutes? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Jenkins. Commissioner Frohr for that second. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. On to our action item. Our action item today is a request for approval of resolution. By the way, it's resolution number 46, authorizing payment of agency funds for improvements to the public infrastructure. Ashley Tolman from our engineering office will make that presentation. And his ugly stepsister, Gary Myers, will also be there.
We'll save the best for last. We'll let the good looking come up last if we have questions.
Yeah, great.
So, commissioners, appreciate your time this morning. We have a reinvestment grant that we would like to be able to do some improvements we've identified that need to be made on 9350 West. Challenge is upon further investigation, it appears that the portion of the road that serves these businesses is just slightly out of the area of where what was identified as the agency. So we for your consideration today, we would like to ask that you widen it as identified in the resolution to include that road so that we can make those improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Is there anything else pertaining to your presentation?
You've been given some documents there that show kind of just the limits of what our improvements would be, and that's essentially it. We've got a road that really needs some attention out there, and we just want to include it so that we can get those improvements done.
Thank you. Commissioner Jenkins, in as much as this is in your portfolio, do you have any comments here?
I don't. It's work that needs to be done.
Is the meeting going on right now?
This is a way that allows us
clicked on the thing and something's going.
This is a way that allows us to do it with these dollars that are left, and it directly affects these areas, even though it's slightly outside of them. It's done specifically for this area. So I'm sure everybody would have no issue with this.
Great. Commissioner Frohr?
No questions, thank you.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve Resolution 46, authorizing the payment of agency funds for improvements to the public infrastructure as presented in this morning's meeting, 9350 West Reconstruction Project.
Motion recognized.
Second.
Seconded. Any other discussion?
Mr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Frohr?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Myers. Ashley did a beautiful job there. We're now to the D item of our again, we're on our Community Reinvestment Agency agenda right now. Are there any comments pertaining to this agenda? If no, Christy, if you'll let it be noted that from now on, the public comments portion of this, I'd like moved right after the call to order from here on out before we issue any, so we can hear from the public first. Today, we didn't have any comments, but I'd like to make sure that they had an opportunity in the future to comment. Thank you very much. Commissioners, entertain a motion for item E echo.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and seconded. We're adjourned.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome those in the chamber as well as those listening online to the 22nd day of December 2020 Weber County Board of Commissioners. We welcome your attendance. I'm Commissioner Gage Frohr. I'm joined this morning with Commissioner Jim Harvey to my right, Commissioner Scott Jenkins to my left, And we're going to start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance given by Ashley Tolman. Invocation will be given by Sean Wilkinson. I'll give the thought of the day, and then we'll go to public comments. Please rise. Ashley?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to come before thee this morning. We are thankful for this Christmas time when we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, and we are grateful for the example and the teachings that he gave us. We pray that we can be loving, compassionate, kind, and equitable in the way that we treat others. We pray that each of us can work hard to improve ourselves, and as we do that, improve our community. We are grateful to live where we do, to have the freedoms that we enjoy, and we are grateful for those who have done so much to preserve those freedoms that we have. And at this time, we pray for those who are dealing with difficulties in their lives, whether those be with health or with other issues, that they may be watched over and that we may be the means of helping them to overcome some of these things as well. And we ask for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sean. Commissioners, my thoughts today as we approach the end of the year. We talk about the holiday season. I think most of us would agree that 2020 has been anything but a common year or a normal year. With the election, with the COVID, some people would say it's a big deal. 2020 was a big deal, which I would say it may have been. But a wise person once told me, really there's only two big deals in your life. First big deal comes when you're born. That's a big deal. The second big deal comes when you die. That's a big deal. Everything else, anything in between, is just life. Get used to it, get over it, live it, do the best you can. This past week, I've had 4 friends, some fairly close friends, that had the second big deal. They died, 4 in a week. Not my best week that I've experienced, but that's what happens. And I would take this opportunity, my thoughts, commissioners, as we hit this holiday season. A lot of times we lose sight of what's big deal and what's not. We get caught up in the day-to-day life that we feel is important, but we don't take time to reach out to those close to us, to our friends and family, and let them know how important they are. Realizing that if we do that and take the time now to do that, we may not miss the opportunity to tell them that after they have their big deal and they're gone. So I would say this is a great holiday season to tell your friends, family, that you haven't told them that you love them, you appreciate them. Take this opportunity to do that, because you never know. If I've experienced this last week, when one of those people in your life may be gone and you don't have that opportunity. So that's my thoughts, commissioners. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go to public comments. Just as a reminder for those that may be listening online or in the audience, we have received some emails and phone calls regarding action item 10, which deals with the ADU ordinance that we'll be discussing under action. Just as a reminder, we have had a public hearing on that item. So this will not be a public hearing. You will not have the opportunity to comment on action item 10. But if you would like to comment now on that action item, now would be the time. So we want to give everybody the opportunity. I didn't want to get to that point and then have people not have the opportunity to address it. So With that, any public comments regarding anything on the agenda that we'll be
Commissioners.
discussing? Go ahead.
Rick Southwick. Rick Southwick would like to comment.
Okay, let's, how many people do we have, Shelley, online that would like to speak to this? You hear me, Shelley? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes,
Rick?
we have, I'm sorry, we have several people. I just don't know who is commenting and not. So far, he's the only one
Got
that's
it.
asked to comment.
Okay, so let's go to those people online first, since we started there. Rick, I hear you're with us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Frohr. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm here as a Weber County resident and also representing the Northern Wasatch Association of Realtors and speaking in support of the proposed ADU ordinance. I'm a planning commissioner for Ogden City, and Ogden City approved widespread use of the accessory dwelling unit a number of years ago. We support this, the realtors support this, and I support this. It's a very good tool for a number of reasons. It allows our senior citizens to stay in their home, age in place. It gives them an opportunity to have a caregiver and still maintain some privacy from the caregivers. It also is a well-needed mechanism to provide affordable housing. The accessory dwelling unit, I think, always requires the main residence to be owner occupied. It allows us, we're in a huge shortage of affordable housing, not just in Weber County, but across the state and across the country. And accessory dwelling units provide an excellent mechanism for individuals, couples, families to have an affordable place to live, to contribute to the care of another. And so for all those reasons, the real estate community is strongly in support of the proposed accessory dwelling unit. It's nothing but a win-win. So thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Southwick, for being with us this morning and taking your time. Shelley, let's go to the next person online that would like to talk or comment.
Kirk Langford.
Good morning.
Kurt, go ahead.
Excuse me. Good morning, commissioners. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
I submitted some comments to you in writing, and I have a respectfully different opinion than Rick. Hello, Rick. Good to see you. We have an ADU possibility up here in the valley that provides all the stuff Rick talked about, but it requires it be added onto your home. And unlike the Front Range, our resources up here are much more limited, and the economic development of this community is more and more tied to recreation, but we're also still trying to keep our agriculture up here and to keep a rural enough community that we are an amenity to the resorts. And so handling an ADUs on this side of the mountain is a little bit different. And it's possible to get ADUs up here by transferring a development rights so that we don't add density. But I would say this conversation's come up every year since I began being involved in planning in about 1995. And each planning commission and county commission have considered this, and they have so far stuck with not allowing separate structured ADUs, for all the reasons that I kind of pointed out in my letter to you guys. And so while at this point in time, I'm not suggesting for Ogden Valley that we don't use ADUs, I am suggesting that perhaps you guys pass the ADUs in the west side of the valley. And let's take some more time and have further public meetings to get more ideas and work out more specifics on transfer of development rights, and who will be a sending area and who won't. And, I put some of those questions in my letter to you folks, and really do something very progressive, but get most of the details worked out first and then make a decision on ADUs rather than making the decision first and trying to backfill with the details. So, that's my position for you today, saying, on the Ogden Valley side of things, let's take a little bit more time. And, we have up here right now on properties that are 20 acres or larger, the ability to do cottage houses or accessory dwelling units as part of the agritourism zone. So I hope you will consider the differences between the west side of the valley and the east side of the valley, and give us some more time. It's tough to get things going right now with COVID. The meetings are a lot easier to attend, I must say, but and get some more public input and put our minds together and figure out, how we do ADUs and TDRs in a wise way and get it all done at the same time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate the comments. Next.
Lease Shusman.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Lee.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to remind everybody, I'm going to hold them to the 3 minutes. So
Yes, I will be very brief. I would just like to second what Kirk just said. Also, what Mr. Southwick said. Personally, I think there are many advantages of ADUs, but I think the devil's in the details. And I would urge you to consider what Kirk has just said and what I said in a public comment email that I sent to you, I hope you got, and that is that I would like to see us all look carefully at the details and table this issue for today and see if we can't come up with something very specific for the Ogden Valley, which would meet the needs of people who would like to have a mother-in-law, an apartment, or a family unit, or low-income housing. There are a lot of things that ADUs could be used for, but I'd like us to really think about how best to integrate that into the Ogden Valley. And I'd like to urge you to table that, to allow maybe 30 to 60 days for some public input so we can all participate in the decision a little bit more. That's all. Thank you.
thank you, Lee. Next.
Shanna Francis.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Shanna, just a reminder, we're going to hold you to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. The reason why I think it's really important to table this at this time, the primary reason, is that the Ogden Valley residents were able to just recently listen to a presentation on the hydrology study. And that was very informative and discussed the water budget up here in the valley and contamination issues. And even from the hydrologist, even recommended expanding the minimum lot size in Ogden Valley to 5 acres, just because of the concern for water quality, which is critical for not only Ogden Valley, but also all of Ogden and others who rely on Pineview Reservoir. With that study in mind, I think it's important to integrate the two, the study and what are we doing to the possibilities and the ramifications of the possibility of substantially increasing density in Ogden Valley. And so even though you've gone through the public process, at that time, this study wasn't, or this presentation on the study hadn't been presented. And with that in mind, with new information that's come to light, I think it's critical that it be tabled. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Anyone else?
I don't see anyone else.
Okay, thank you. We'll close it to the Zoom. Anybody in the audience like to come up, please come forward. Just give us your name if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, my name's Dave Morby,
Welcome.
resident of the Valley. Good morning, Commissioner. I'm in support of the proposal. I was a commissioner in the Valley in 95 through 99, and it seems like it's been tabled that long.
Yeah.
A planning commissioner?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
for up there, planning commissioner.
Planning commission.
Yeah, planning commissioner for up in the Valley. Seems like we've talked about this long enough, and I think we have the right people in place for the health department and the water issues and everything. I think we need to pull the trigger on this, and I support you guys for doing this. I do live right at the gate to North Fork, so that's going to have a big impact on me, but this has been part of my retirement plan all along. So for those folks who are thinking that way, might be a good opportunity to support your income. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Dave. Appreciate you taking your time. Next.
My name's Tom Quinn. I'm a resident up on Snow Basin Road. I just became aware of this development, so I might be mistaken in what I'm thinking, but what I understand is this Legacy Mountain development if this ADU thing gets passed, is going to be able to put 15 cabins, 15 plus, right across the street from me. When 2.5 years ago, you made me sign something saying I wouldn't rent out, even on a long-term basis, the apartment over my accessory building. And now it sounds like and that was in the name of population density. And now it sounds like right across the street, it's going to be 4 times the density that was permitted to me. That's one of my concerns. Single night rentals is a concern, if this is going to allow that. And the septic and the water is also a big concern. I think there's a lot of people that are unhappy up there with what's going on with the septic, and they're afraid about water supply. So that's pretty much my comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I would just suggest for those that haven't read the ordinance, there was a favorite saying of mine in the legislature when I received 200 emails opposing a bill. Have you read the bill? 99% of the people had never read or understood it. So I would just say anybody that hasn't read it, understand it, and I think a lot of your fears, your concerns will go away. This ordinance, as written, actually is almost density neutral as we look at the TDR component of that. I think Mr. Ewert will present that. But I would just suggest you read the ordinance. There has been some misinformation passed out. It's unfortunate. Some information was passed out that was confusing this with STRs, overnight rentals, and it's not the case. That STRs on nightly rentals will be addressed at a later issue. So it's unfortunate that we have people out there that spread misinformation. It causes confusion. It causes confusion within the communities. But I would just suggest before you attack your neighbors or print misinformation, you read the ordinance. But appreciate it. Anybody else in the audience or in the chamber, please come forward. Again, I'm going to remind everybody, we're going to hold you to the 3-minute.
My name is Glenn Croydon, and my wife and I are the owners and operators of Wild Turkey Lodge in Huntsville. We want to just address the TDRs, and specifically because first of all, thank you for letting us present this. We want to raise the issue of affordable housing and whether or not the TDR really is one that will help the county and our Ogden Valley or not. First of all, I think having development rights that are equivalent throughout the county is more important. And so I'd like to have the commission think more about everyone being under the same structure. But we're talking about affordable housing for seasonal workers and new young families and transitional families. My wife and I are both former educators. We have had lots of people that we've worked with who have had struggles in their lives, and we want to be able to see that they actually have an opportunity for housing in Ogden Valley, rather than something that's more exclusive and more divisive. If the TDR proposal goes through, here's how I look at it, just from a family man. First of all, if I don't spend the money for the TDR rights, we can't get full use of our property as an income-producing benefit. We have a cabin on the property that is not attached to the main house, so the bed and breakfast stands as a separate entity. However, the cabin cannot be used other than for family and friends. We'd like to be able to use that for people who are struggling, or for long-term, 30 days or more opportunities. If we do spend money on the TDR for the rights, we'd be allowed to use our property, but our loss would be the funds earmarked for our family and inheritance. We're old enough to start thinking about what's our legacy for our family, and that money is lost to us. So people, the land developers who can expand and develop property, benefit. We don't, as individual and a small family business. Who loses? Families who want the best for their future generations, middle-class families who want to keep funds for their children, Ogden Valley residents who do not want to reestablish a Park City environment. And so those are the key pieces. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Appreciate that. Anyone else in the chamber? Or do we have anybody else sign online? Oh, come on up, Sylvia. Welcome.
Thank you. Sylvia Salisbury in Ogden. I have no skin in the game of what's been talked about, so I have something else to say. I'm going to take that down, if that's okay. In keeping with what your thought for the day was, I want to say thank you. You elected officials and the employees here for trying your best to do what is good and right for our county. I don't necessarily feel that way when property tax time comes around, but I know that it's necessary, and it is necessary to keep the wheels of government running and the various entities. But I am really grateful for what you do. And another thing I'm grateful for is that you are willing to publicly invite the influence of our Heavenly Father into these meetings. Not all public meetings are willing to do that, and I'm grateful that you do. And I just hope with this incoming administration that they won't find a way to block that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. We appreciate those. Not very often do we hear positive comments. We're used to more negative comments, but they are very much appreciated. I can tell you this, Sylvia, that any decisions that this commission has made, and I can say for the future, is made with valid communication, determination, and really what is in the best interest of the entire county. So we appreciate that very much. Anyone else, Shelley? Anyone else in the audience, chamber?
No.
Is that a no? That's a no. Okay. Thank you very much for those that participated this morning. Again, your remarks will be part of the record as we move forward with this morning's agenda. With that, commissioners, unless there's additional comments from the commission, I'm going to move the consent agenda. So, with the request for the consent items, let's go to G1, request for approval of warrants number 3355 through 3388 and 455 376 through 455 665 in the amount of $4,576,321.30. 2, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $58,099.81. 3, request for approval of the minutes for the meeting held on December 15, 2020. 4, request for approval of new business licenses. 5, request for approval of the cancellation of the December 29th, 2020 regular commission meeting. 6, request for approval of retirement agreements by and between Weber County and the following individuals: Kevin Wilson, Bobby Kamak, Heather Davies, Shelley Stevenson, Tiffany O'Pikins, and Thomas Jackson. That's our consent items. Commissioners, questions or comments before we go to Ricky for explanation?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just, I should speak about this more often, but in item number 5 of our consent items, we're approving 6 contracts for retirement agreements. You know, I'm maybe a little more sensitive to certain things, but we heard some comments during our public comments with regards to people who are turning a page or going on to the next chapter. I'm of belief that a person who chooses to be a veterinarian or chooses to be a healthcare worker, chooses to be a worker at the transfer station or a worker here at the county, they're a good dog catcher no matter what it is. There's not one position that's greater or less than the others, and these people have chosen to serve within a county structure for their better parts, several decades of their lives. And I just wanted to, from the 3 of us, and I'm fairly confident I can speak for you, Commissioner Jenkins and Commissioner Frohr, we appreciate your service so much, and we wish you great luck, great success in the next chapter of your life. And we hope you're happy. We hope this move's a happy one for you, and that you, as you turn the page, that the next part of your life is just as happy, if not more so. You've worked hard and you've earned it, and we're really grateful for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those remarks. Commissioner Jenkins, questions?
No real question to Commissioner Harvey's remark. We went yesterday to a reception in here, and everybody I've talked to, they're actually excited. They're moving on to a new chapter in their life, and it's fun to see all this excitement. Good things are happening at the county, and we'll miss these folks. They've done a great job for the county, and we're so grateful for the service they've rendered. But at the same time, it's fun to see the excitement in their lives as they turn a page and move on. And that's what it's supposed to be like. Life's supposed to be good, and it is for all, but especially for these folks, it appears to be really good right now. So I'm excited for them.
I think we all are. Okay, no other questions. We'll go to Ricky. Mr. Hatch.
Good morning. We issued 13 purchase orders this week for $58,000. 30% of that amount, or $18,000, is for the transfer station. That was primarily for a permit from the state, as well as equipment repairs and some emergency staffing costs. 22%, or $13,000, is for property management. That will go towards purchasing a conduit bender as well as a blower. And then 20%, or $12,000, is for the animal shelter to purchase a new boiler. As far as checks or warrants, we issued 322 warrants this week for $4.6 million. Almost 2/3 of that amount, $2.8 million, is disbursement of the CARES Act funds, and they went primarily to Ogden and Weber State. 8% of the total amount, $387,000, was on behalf of the jail to purchase or to pay for nursing services, as well as culinary services and some purchasing of meal delivery carts. And that's it for the large items this week.
Is that it? Okay, questions, comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion on the consent items 1 through 6.
Motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the items 1 through and including, I believe, on my record here, was 5. It is 6, misnumbered. Sorry. G 1 through 6.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Harvey.
You know, Commissioner Harvey didn't go to Weber High.
No,
so he struggles with 5 and 6. Anyway.
He still has time, though.
That's true. Yeah. I'll second his motion.
I believe that 5 and 6 are a little closer to my age than some. Just numbers, though, we're just talking.
Now you're rubbing it in. Okay. All right. With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Consent items 1 through 6 have been approved. Let's go to action items. Action item H1, request for approval of agreements by and between Weber County and the following entities to provide coronavirus COVID-19 relief funds: Ogden Valley Ogden Valley Park Service Area, Taylor West Weber Water Improvement District, Bona Vista Water Improvement District, Weber State University, IHC Health Services, Inc., McCady Hospital, Weber School District, Ogden School District, Ogden Regional Hospital, and Ogden Weber Technical College. We have with us Mr. John Bond, the guru of COVID-19 CARES Act. Mr. John Bond.
Commissioner, you're so kind. Thank you. As we've been sprinting toward the finish line here of December 30th to get all the CARES Act funding dispersed, I heard about a half hour ago from the governor's office that they've now extended this for a full year through what was signed by the President of the United States last night. So we now have a year to finish up this last 2 weeks of work. But I think we'll just carry on. We'll take a day or two off for a moment for the holidays and then get back into this soon. But last week we brought to you a nonprofit policy for homeless. We're currently vetting 10 nonprofit agencies to provide them funding. We're going through that right now. Hope to be done by the end of the year or the first of the year. This here provides you 9 other contracts. The Ogden Weber Technical College called me yesterday and asked to be withdrawn from this group. So we do have a signed document from them, but they've now withdrawn that, so they have not asked for funding. And the other 8 are still there. I ask for any questions.
Thank you. So the intent, Mr. Bond, is for these particular agencies or institutions we have before us is to hit the pause button for at least a period of a couple of weeks till we understand what the new bill, the new CARES Act funding bill may look like, and then reevaluate this after the first of the year.
Yeah, I think that everything is in play right now. If you approve this, it would be good with us to just have this in the queue and ready to go. So I think approving it is appropriate. The question is just we may just take a couple of weeks and just evaluate. We've also had another request yesterday to evaluate some CARES Act funding, and we just wanted to put that into the queue and present it to the commissioners.
Perfect. Well, your team's worked very hard, and I think taking a week or two off at this point in time, especially given the alternative that we'd be working long hours just to get these last week or 2 week commitments made, makes a lot of sense. So,
thank you.
And I'm glad that they didn't wait until the last day of the year before they passed that bill. So we can be thankful for that.
It's all good. But yeah, so I ask your consideration of approving these contracts or these agreements and in our request today. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, questions on Mr. Bond's proposal?
It's been phenomenal to see what you've done, John. Is the phone call sufficient was all my question to you. The phone call from the state, was that sufficient for you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's a little inside. Mr. Chair, when you're ready, I'm
ready. Let's just questions by Commissioner Jenkins. Let's go.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion on under item H, our action items that we approve. Item number 1, including all of those contracts excepting the Ogden Weber Technical College who requested to be withdrawn.
That is correct.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Bond.
Again, thank you for your support. Merry Christmas.
We appreciate your work with your team, and get out and enjoy the holidays. This will wait, and we'll deal with it after the first of the year. Thank you. All right, commissioners, let's go to our next action item, request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing trustees to the Plain City Cemetery District Board of Trustees. Stacy Skeen.
Morning, Commissioners.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Stacey. We can hear you. Thank you.
So I was notified by the Plain City Cemetery District Board to post for vacancies. They had 3 members whose terms were expiring at the end of December of this year. And so I posted in accordance with state statute, and I received the applications that you have before you. And there are 3 positions that need to be filled.
All right. Commissioner Jenkins, this is your hometown.
You bet.
And so,
In the past, we've struggled filling these vacancies. So I went out this year and recruited
good.
to make sure we had enough people. Well, as it turned out, we had 3 apply besides the one I recruited. So we would have been okay, but I feel quite a commitment now to the one I recruited. And so I'd like to make a motion that we confirm Jeff East, who's currently serving, Monette Panter, who's currently serving, and Brent Weston. He is in your packet. You'll see that.
Got it.
Now, we had Brian Cottle apply, and Brian would have been just fine. I'd had no, and if he'd have come and talked to me, I probably could have got him on because I didn't get a chance, prior to recruiting somebody, but he didn't. And so I recruited Brent. And so I feel obliged to put Brent on there since I recruited him. So that's my motion.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
You have a second.
Any discussion to that?
Commissioners, there are 3 vacancies. Jeff East and Monette Panter are currently serving, and you need to fill 3 other vacancies with those 4 applications that you have.
Misunderstood.
Okay.
Oh, I misunderstood that too.
All right. So
I'm sorry, Monette, Stacy. So we had 3 vacancies there?
Right. So Ross Taylor, Brent White, and Jill Freestone, terms expired at the end of the month. And Ross Taylor, Jill Freestone reapplied. And then we had 2 new applicants, Brent Weston and Brian Cottle.
So we need 2 more individuals. Is that correct, Stacey?
Correct.
We need 2 more individuals, Commissioner.
All right, so I'll include in my motion to reappoint Ross Taylor, because he's serving there. And who was the other one that you said reapplied that was serving?
Joe Freestone.
Joe Freestone. I also make the motion to appoint him. So that'll give us the 5, and that includes Brent to fill the vacancy.
Right. Brent Cottle.
Okay. Weston.
Brent Weston, excuse me. Okay. Does that make sense, Stacy?
Yep, that does.
Okay.
All right. So
That's a motion.
that's the amended motion.
I'll second that amended motion.
Any second? All those in favor say aye.
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 What's aye? Those people are now approved. Thank you very much.
It's a resolution, Commissioner.
Thank you, Stacy.
Resolutions 47,
Thanks.
Commissioner Chair Floor.
Oh, excuse me. Resolution. Go ahead.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Floor?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now let's go to request for approval of the final reading of an ordinance amending Title 12, Building Regulations and Site Permits of the Weber County Code. Mr. Sean Wilkinson. And I believe this is Ordinance 25.
Stan Burnish.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Commissioners, this is the final reading of some amendments to our code that governs building permits within the county. And again, the changes here, we are amending certain fees. The reason behind those fee amendments is to reflect the appropriate building valuations and provide Weber County with the resources that we need, including hiring a new employee in 2021 to meet and exceed the state mandates that we're required to meet. We are also bringing the code current with the state building code requirements so that our ordinance will change as the state code changes and we don't have to always monitor that. But those are, that's the summary of what is being changed. And Stan or I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And again, this is a final reading, so this is just a reconfirmation of your presentation, I believe, the last commission meeting.
Correct, and nothing has changed.
Nothing's
in the
changed since
ordinance.
then.
That's right.
Okay. So the public has had the ability to weigh in the first time, and then commissioners, questions, comments? If not, we'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, we've been through this, and this is basically an upgrade. I mean, we're tweaking and changing and modifying a few small little areas, and it is going to allow this department to continue to run. So I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance number 25, which has to do with this.
Oh, great. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins on ordinance 25.
Second.
And a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Faure?
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Let's go now to, thank you, Stan, very much for being here with us. Let's go now to action item 4, request for approval of a final reading of an ordinance granting a non-exclusive franchise to All West/Utah Inc. for the purpose of installing, operating, and maintaining a communication systems within the public right-of-ways of Weber County. Mr. Wilkinson, you're back up.
Yes, Commissioners, we discussed this last week in the first reading. Again, this would give All West Utah the ability to install their infrastructure for communication purposes within the county rights-of-way. There was one question that was brought up that had to do with a potential franchise tax. I have discussed that with Scott Park and with Cortland Erickson, and we really don't have any new information to present to you today on that particular issue. What we do know is that we have not required or not imposed anything like that on similar franchise agreements like with Rocky Mountain Power in the past. So
does that conclude your presentation?
that's all I have. Everything else is the same in the ordinance that was presented.
Right. Okay. This is something we've discussed before. Commissioners, questions, comments?
So when it comes to the franchise tax, I've actually been a senator or a mayor that, well, actually, I take that back. I was a city councilman when we put the franchise tax on in Plain City. But this really doesn't have anything to do with that. So with that, I'd make a motion that we approve. I'm assuming, Fatima, this is ordinance 26. Okay.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Jenkins to approve ordinance 26.
Second.
And we have a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Faure?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to action item 5, request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Jordan Boyer for the Weber County exterior wall cladding. Mr. Bryce Taylor.
Yeah, so this is to replace the deteriorating granite limestone that's out in front of the building. This went through the bid process. We had met with them, went through the bid process. They put in the bid, and it's actually, the company is J.D. Wadsworth Construction. That's the actual contractor. Jordan Boyer's just
Got it.
been our contact.
Okay, great.
So.
Good to know. What's the amount on that, Bryce?
$90,000, 116, I think, somewhere right in there.
Close enough. Okay, and would that be the entire building or a portion of the building?
It's just a lower section of the west side, the Washington side, and the 24th Street side. So it's just the bottom section that is deteriorating and the holes. And
Yeah, I think it is appropriate time to do it. It's not very sightly and obviously probably is not great for water seepage, et cetera. Okay, commissioners, questions, comments?
I have none, but I would certainly be willing to make a motion to approve this contract.
Please do. We have a motion to approve the contract.
Second.
And a second. Place the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to action item 6. Thank you, Mr. Bryce Taylor. Let's now go to approval of a building lease agreement by and between Weber County and Post Brothers LLC to provide storage, maintenance, building, and outdoor storage for equipment used by Weber County Property Management. Mr. Bryce Taylor, you're still there.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we currently are at this location. We've extended this contract again for another 3 months till we get our buildings up and erected at our new facility. We're a little behind on schedule with those buildings going up, so we need to extend this lease till those are completed.
So is the extension for 3 months?
Yes.
Got it.
Look,
Commissioner Jenkins, this is your
It is. So
Portfolio?
this, getting the approvals from Og City, we're so, they took us a little extra time. And as a result, we missed our opportunity to build that window of opportunity to build those buildings. And that's just life. It happens, So I'm trying to think of that guy's name. The building manufacturer.
The Roper buildings.
Yeah, but what's his name?
Dan Salazar.
Yeah, Dan Scarborough.
Sorry, yeah.
He put us back in his schedule, but that's not till March, and that's just life, And so anyway, we missed our opportunity, and we're going to go the winter here, and 90 days is 90 days. What do you do? So with that, I'd make a motion that we approve this contract. The posts, by the way, we should make note, have been very congenial to us.
Good.
They've allowed us to extend this, and they've not given us a hard time, and they want their building back, and I don't blame them. So anyway, they've been really good to us.
Great, thank you. We have a motion.
Second?
And we have a second then for approval of that lease agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you.
Let's move now to action item 7, request for approval of a resolution authorizing payment of agency funds for improvements to public infrastructure. That's not Ashley. Go ahead.
Commissioners, thanks for your time.
Mr. Gary Myers.
Appreciate it. We would like to request your approval for resolution to use the funds for the Community Reinvestment Act to make some improvements we've identified on 9350 West.
Okay, that'd be the 9350 West, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, questions? This is one that we talked about earlier in the meeting, or that CRA meeting.
Yep.
Correct. Okay. Questions, comments? If not, action. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve action item H7 for approval of these funds that have been notified or identified here for the improvements of 9300 West project.
Second. And we have a second. I believe that's resolution 48. Roll call.
48. Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thanks, gentlemen.
Mr. Myers. All right, let's go to action item 8. Request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and the Department of Justice, DOJ, for federal assistance through the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program. Brian Baggs, we have somebody here to present on that. I'm not familiar with this, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Because it doesn't seem like Mr. Baggs was able to make it today, I'm going to request that we hold this item.
All right. We have is that a motion to hold?
How about a motion just to move the agenda?
Okay, we could do that too.
Okay, that's probably better.
All right.
Second.
Move the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Agenda has been moved. We go to the next agenda item, which is 9, which is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Christopher Turpin to have the Fifth Dimensional Marketing LLC DBA Gun Preparedness.com.
It's a mouthful.
What, Todd, what have you got us in here? To develop and operate firearm sales, firearm rentals, ammo sales, and gunsmithing concessions at Weber Shooting Complex.
This is great.
Okay, Mr. Ferrario, explain that one.
Good morning, Commissioners. Well, I'd like to
Pronounce that one.
throw things sideways.
Pronounce that one.
You have to eat 4 saltines and then try it.
Yeah.
As you guys are aware, we did a concessionaire at the archery complex, which has been successful to the point that we added on already. It's allowed us to bring some new sponsors in, and it's been a really good deal. In that, of course, my manager from the gun range came over, and as they usually do, can we do that too? So we went and did some planning. Space is obviously tight over there. With the addition of the classrooms that we brought in the previous year, the law enforcement ready room is not being used in the same fashion. They do use it to store their equipment while shooting, but they're not using it as a small classroom. That allowed us to take half of that space. So we are mudding today, so we are close to being done for a space for a retailer in there. They would be offering, probably one of our most requested things is, do you guys rent guns? So he will be doing rentals. He will have ammunition sales. He will be licensed to sell firearms. He will also do some minor gunsmithing, and then there are a couple that he will send out to that are local businesses in Weber County if it's a little deeper than he can do there. And this, again, is an increased revenue source for the gun range because we are tied to a percentage the same as we do at the archery complex. Legal was actually the first one to take a look at it. They were practicing out there. We showed them our idea. They kind of went over it and said, we think this is a good thing for the county with the correct liability coverage from the concessionaire, which is in place. We have copies of, so we would like your thoughts or approval on this contract.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ferrario, questions, comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Harvey.
Mr. Ferrario, are you at liberty to talk about the comment that a particular sponsor came to us, a world-class sponsor came to us and talked about their modeling of what they were used to doing, and then they saw ours and said, hey, you guys, can you speak to that, or is that?
Are you referring to Randy Walk with Hoyt?
Might be a good one.
Might be a good one. Little off topic, but absolutely.
Well,
you're the commissioner, so if you tell me
it relates
to talk
over
about
to
it,
the
I will
other
do it.
side, because we do things a little different in the county, but
Yes.
which if you'd talk to that success.
So we multiple times had Randy Walk, who is the president CEO of Hoyt Archery, and Greg Easton, who obviously is the owner of Hoyt and Easton, and also the Easton Foundation. Legal actually has just finished some contracts with them, so you will see at the first of the year both of those sponsorship agreements plus a granting program from their foundation for the archery complex. What Commissioner Harvey is speaking of is we gave a long tour, and you gentlemen were there for the lunch portion of it. Randy Walk stood up in front of us and basically said, for 14 years, Greg Easton has asked us to do something we have failed to do. Not build an archery range, but do an archery experience. And in those conversations, I think the interesting piece that we took from that is, as a county, we approach this in a whole different way. We're not a retailer that has brick and mortar that's trying to have a shooting range connected to them for the benefit of their customers, whose sole concentration is generating dollars as a retailer. This is a community-driven range. Our first and foremost thought was, how do we get shooters from our community and, of course, surrounding communities for the tourism piece to come to us to shoot? Then we looked at the concessionaire, the retail piece, as a revenue stream without the expense of employees and the bandwidth and the dollars for purchasing and, product aging. How do we put this into an equation that makes sense for the community? Commissioner Harvey, you don't know this yet, but I received a phone call from Randy last week. Greg Easton has assigned a full-time employee for 6 months to look at how we started, why we did what we did, how we came across the connections we did, whether in our case it was through Greg Buxton or through DNR, and how we built this from the ground up. And they would like to blueprint this to present to other counties and cities throughout the U.S. So he's assigned a full-time person to meet with us. At some point, they would like to come back to you and ask if they paid for it, would we help with some of the presentations, because they think the model is pretty unique. And obviously, we took over a gun range that was being operated and operated very well with a little bit different focus than what we have. So we're trying to share some of those ideas between the two facilities.
So would you say that the modeling at the archery range, which appears to be world class, according to Mr. Easton, who's probably the foremost archer company on the planet, would you say that modeling, because of the success of that modeling, you're just moving it over to the shooting experience.
Correct. As my guys say, it's one of the first times my napkin drawing made sense. So it's a good thing.
Wonderful.
It was a big team effort between roads. Legal was involved the whole way. We had engineering out there in the mud with us many times when we hit water. So it also shows the collaborative nature of what we do. And, it was interesting listening to the public comments because the one thing I don't think it's said enough, most of our employees are Weber County taxpayers. So when we look at these projects, it's our people that are running it and our funds, and how do we put those in different areas for the enjoyment of the county. And sometimes that gets skipped. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That concludes your questions. Commissioner Jenkins? Does that conclude your presentation?
It does. Don't
Okay.
remember what I was presenting, but yes, it does.
Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, seeing no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract by and between Weber County and Christopher Turpin for Fifth Dimensional Marketing for the guns and sales and gunsmithing at the shooting complex.
Got it. I'm going to restate that, gunammopreparedness.com.
Yes.
Now that I had a second to look at it.
Yeah.
All right. It wasn't as hard as I
It
thought.
mushes together a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Maybe you should try a space. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. No other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. You
Thank
guys
you.
have a Merry Christmas.
You too,
Thanks
Todd.
Todd. Appreciate you being with us. Let's go now to action item 10, request for approval of an ordinance of the County Commissioners of Weber County adopting accessory dwelling unit regulations and standards in the Weber County Land Use Code and related ordinance amendments. We have with us Tammy Adelot and Charlie. Are you going to take part in this? Hello. Okay.
Yes.
Tammy, thank you for being with us. Time's yours.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, this was brought before you commissioners back on December 8th in the form of a public hearing. We've noticed for it. And after some discussions with the county commissioners, we have made some adjustments to this, which I believe you've got a copy of this proposed ordinance before you. There were a few things I wanted to kind of make note of. That perhaps were not clear or missed at some point by maybe some general public. Some things to note, and we've gone over this the last time, but the proposed ordinance allows for only one accessory dwelling unit per lot. Only one. Oh, Charlie has a comment. Okay. The ordinance also allows for an accessory dwelling unit to be located in an existing accessory structure. The owner must occupy either the accessory dwelling unit or the single-family dwelling. There are size requirements. There are no short-term rentals allowed in either of these, in either the accessory dwelling unit or the single-family dwelling where an accessory dwelling unit has been allowed. And then, of course, that last line, we're looking for a continuity of the single-family dwelling. So if it's an attached accessory dwelling unit, the ordinance does require that it maintains the appearance of a single-family dwelling. For example, the entrance may be located to the side or the rear, okay? We did make some adjustments to size requirements based on discussion with the county commissioners. I believe previously we allowed for a 1,500 square foot footprint, but didn't necessarily cap the square feet, which meant that there could have been allowed maybe up to 4,500 square feet. We've made some adjustments to that based on feedback from commissioners. And you'll see that in your ordinance, but the gist of it is that it cannot be any less than a 400 square foot footprint and no more than a 1,000 square foot footprint, than a 1,500 square foot footprint. We are allowing for up to 2,000 square feet total. The only exception to those size requirements are when an ADU occupies a basement. Okay. I just want to address just 2 or 3 public concerns that have been mentioned, and I'm going to have Charlie talk about the water and the TDR requirement, which staff has discussed at length, especially over the last couple of weeks. One of them is that accessory dwelling units are completely separate from short-term rentals. The other was a concern for inadequate opportunity for the public to address this, and as you can see, we've had this on several work sessions with both planning commissions. Those agendas are posted ahead of the meeting times. So we feel like we've given ample opportunity to get some public input on this. And then regarding water availability, specifically the water study that's been mentioned, I'm going to let Charlie address that, as well as the TDR requirement. This ordinance that you have before you does have a TDR requirement. So I'm going to let Charlie speak to those. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Questions, commissioners?
I do.
Commissioner Jenkins.
This gentleman back here brought up a really good point, and that is the fact if I have a structure today that is separate from my home that has been used, don't care what it's been, how it's been used, but it's been used, a living, I'm not talking about just a garage, but a living facility, in his case, a cabin. I'm of the opinion that should be grandfathered into this. Would that be the case, Mr. Ewert or Tammy, under the ordinance?
Is it the only structure on the lot?
The only structure. He's just getting caught up in this, and he's saying, which I agree, I should be grandfathered into this because I precede the ordinance.
Do you want to address that one, Charlie?
I didn't want to step on Tammy's toes if she had a quick response for it. So if it's a structure that has been occupied, well, first off, let's take a couple steps back. If you got 2 houses on your property today and both of them were lawfully established, they are grandfathered. They'll be legal and non-conforming. What I think I heard from the gentleman was that there's another dwelling or a potential dwelling unit on the property. He's been told he can't use it as a dwelling unit because it's a second dwelling. Not exactly sure. I guess the point is that as long as both of them have been lawfully permitted through whatever legal requirements were in place at the time, or no legal requirements, as would be the case before zoning, those would be grandfathered in. Yes.
Right. So say that last part again, because if the cabin were built back in 1870.
Yep. Let's say the cabin was built in 1870 and the other house or primary dwelling on the property was built in, I believe we enacted
1970.
Let's say we enacted zoning right about 1968.
Okay, so I was off 2 years.
Let's say 67. Both of them would be grandfathered in. However, the key here is that let's say the cabin was built in the 1800s and the house was built at another point in time where there was a requirement for there to only be one dwelling unit on the property. That wouldn't be in compliance. That gets a little sticky. Why would the county approve a dwelling unit when there's another dwelling unit on the property unless there was already some kind of allowance for it? So in some cases, you'll have zoning estoppel that'll cover for that. For the most part, I think it's a non-issue. If it's a dwelling unit on the property already and it's the only one, for example, a cabin, can be used as a dwelling unit regardless. If it's the second dwelling unit on the property and both of them were legally established, grandfathered in.
All right, I just want to make sure we had in the minutes the fact that this was grandfathered in because it would be prior to the ordinance.
Absolutely. Okay. And I appreciate you bringing that. I had the same concern. It just, as somebody has purchased a property with another dwelling unit on there, it would just seem beyond my capacity to say that they'd have to go out and buy a TDR in order to utilize that. So I want to make sure that that's also clear, Commissioner Jenkins.
There have been circumstances in the past where there was a dwelling unit on the property that was legally established. Somebody wanted to build a new dwelling unit, and the county required them to remove the living facilities from the first dwelling unit in order to build the new dwelling unit. In this particular case, if those circumstances were to occur, they could convert the original dwelling unit back to a dwelling unit, but they would be required to use the transfer of the right if it's a detached dwelling. And I can think of probably 3 different circumstances in the valley where that would be the case.
Okay.
Make sense? Do you want me to address water and TDR before sitting down and letting Tammy take care of the rest?
And I just want to clarify since I mentioned in my early remarks, there's been some misinformation about this being tied with short-term rentals. Is there anything in this ordinance that deals with or embodies short-term rentals, gives them permission where they don't currently have it?
No to the second part of the question, yes to the first. So the ordinance specifically says you can't use an accessory dwelling unit for short-term rental.
Okay. So the information that was passed that this would expand STRs is not valid.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the big concern, which we share, and I think the commission shares, is that STRs are going to overshadow, in terms of financial value, affordability of long-term rental units, and that wouldn't be in compliance with what our general plan suggests. And so, yeah, we would restrict short-term rentals from any of these.
All right. And one last question, Charlie. The other concern that's been brought up is that there hasn't been a opportunity for the public to weigh in, to have input. I remember back on December 8th, we had a public hearing. It was attended by 2 or 3 individuals only.
That's right.
So do you feel that the public has had an opportunity? This has been discussed, as I recall, since early last spring.
Yes.
Is that a valid concern, or has the public had an opportunity to weigh in, give input, send emails, et cetera, on this issue?
Yeah, the first part of the question is it might be a valid concern if people aren't paying attention to the agendas. As you can see from the bullet points on the screen right now, it has been agendized that many times.
Can you put that screen back up, Tammy? Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to make sure that this becomes part of the public record, since that has been addressed. And again, is it your fault, or is it the county's fault? These have been published in a prominent location on the website. Do you feel that the public has had an opportunity to weigh in?
I do.
Okay.
I think there's been a lot of opportunities to do so.
Thank you.
Well, and it was also mentioned, Mr. Chair, that we've been talking about this for well over 20 years at different.
Yeah, and we actually opened this file early part of fall of last year. So we've been working on it with the Planning Commission in different types of scenarios and conversations, and you guys as the County Commission since over a year ago.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that becomes part of the public record.
Yeah,
Thank you. Go ahead.
You're welcome. Regarding water concerns, commissioners, I know you guys have been involved and were a part of the presentation that the state gave. I know this is a big concern that's come up recently because the state has finally put together a presentation for the public and gave it to them last week. That said, the state has already given each of you guys the presentation, as well as the water primary water entities that are in the valley. So you guys have been aware of it for about a year. I know that we're all concerned about water and clean water and drinking water. And you guys have given us, as the staff, direction to address that in several different ordinance amendments, which are ongoing and we will bring to you soon. That said, if we are able to successfully implement the transferable development right component of this, the concern about water gets not just negated, but reversed. Because instead of having a single-family dwelling on a 3-acre lot somewhere, you're going to have a essentially accessory dwelling unit much smaller than what that single-family dwelling would otherwise be in somebody's backyard. And so much less of a water footprint for these uses if these transfers are successful. So otherwise, that's if it's in a detached structure. If it's in an attached structure, your code already allows for that to occur. Accessory apartments are already part of the existing code. If it's a part of the primary dwelling, it's currently allowed as a conditional use permit. Every conditional use permit we've presented on this has essentially been a rubber stamp with the Planning Commission because the standards are very clear. We're suggesting, with what you have in front of you, that continue to be an allowed use. Instead of a conditional use, just make it a permitted use, staff approval. We already know what the impacts are going to be. They're negligible if they're part of the dwelling. And then the TDR component, the transfer of rights, would come if it's a detached building, an accessory building that has the dwelling unit in it.
Charlie, I just want to make sure that I understood what you said.
Okay.
So if we have a detached dwelling, somebody would like to follow the procedure for detached ADU, and the requirement would be to purchase a TDR at some point, there would be less impact than if that TDR was used on a on another existing lot or somewhere else because of the size requirements.
That's
So
exactly right.
actually, the septic and water capacity availability become less than they would under if that TDR was transferred or used at an additional lot.
That's right. Just along the lines of our discussion in your work session yesterday on the subject of water in general. These long-term accessory dwelling units are going to be far more predictable in how many people per housing unit, per dwelling accessory dwelling unit there are going to be, which is still going to be less than you see in a standard single-family home because they're smaller. So we'll be able to predict that, whereas these a larger dwelling unit that's on a 3-acre lot that could maybe at some point even be used for vacation rentals, very unpredictable, very volatile usership of those, depending on the peak periods of the year. So very, very less concerned about accessory dwelling units and the impact it has on the community, especially if you're talking about going from a big house to a small home in someone's backyard. Big house on a big lot, small home in someone's backyard.
Makes sense. Okay.
Let's see, there was another thing I wanted to address on that. TDRs, very quickly.
Yep.
I know there was some concerns in our last meeting about the fact that there is no mechanism for TDRs to occur. In fact, it sounded like there were some folks online who were concerned that we're putting the cart in front of the horse here. That's not the case. In fact, this is what is written into the proposal, which is similar to what the Planning Commission forwarded to you originally. It's not the same as what you saw in last week's meeting. TDRs are back in where an outbuilding or accessory dwelling unit would require it. However, we're not calling it TDRs. It's not defined. It's not definable as a TDR under state code. This is a much lighter version. We call it TDR light if you want to, lowercase TDR instead of capital TDR. But essentially, what a landowner will be required to do if they want to put an accessory dwelling unit in an accessory building, not attached, they're going to need to go to another landowner who's got the ability to, who has a right to build another home on their property based on the area of the property. That landowner will record a covenant in favor of Weber County that says, even though our zoning rights say we have X amount of dwelling units assigned to this property through zoning, we now have X minus 1. Assigned to the property. And then the person who is moving the development right to their property for the backyard accessory dwelling unit, they will have a covenant recorded to their property that says, in favor of Weber County, that says, we now have X plus 1 in terms of zoning rights. There was one other concern that was brought up that this is going to increase the density by 7 times or 14 times or whatever it was based on how many acres somebody has across the street. That's not the case. One accessory dwelling unit, whether it's inside or outside in an outbuilding per lot, no more than that. So very low impact. I think that this negates the huge concern, the nebulous concern of what TDRs are, where the sending areas need to be, where the receiving areas need to be. This is just anyone who has rights can sell, essentially, through a private transaction, not governed by the county. Anyone who doesn't have the right but wants it can move it. We're just talking about one unit, one transfer. We'll address capital TDR, the big TDR, with an ordinance proposal in the coming months. Any questions?
I like that TDR light. Okay, makes sense. All right, so what we're saying is this is not a huge change in what we've seen with TDRs. We're not trying to reinvent or create the wheel with TDRs. That's also been expressed as a major concern to delay this. It's going to be really up to a property owner to go to a neighbor, friend, somebody in their church that may say, okay, I'm going to record a covenant. You can take my right. I'll record it with the county, plus 1, minus 1.
Yep.
Pretty easy to manage.
I think so, yep. And that'll be, with the covenant, we'll have a tracking ledger that shows who's sent, who's received. That tracking ledger will seamlessly be integrated into the big TDR if we can get that managed.
Right. But that comes at a later date.
At a much later date, yep.
Along with the STRs that will come at a later date.
Yep, that's correct. Okay.
Other question? Anything else, Charlie?
No, I think Tammy's got one more slide to get through, and I think
Tammy?
we're good.
No, I think that's it, Commissioners. Do you have any other questions for me regarding the proposed ordinance before you?
Questions, Commissioners?
I do have a comment. This has been coming for a long time, and I do not want to affect people's property rights that exist as they are today, and so that's why I made sure we went out of our way to protect those people who have those facilities today that they're grandfathered in. And when they talk about water problems up there, these are wastewater issues, and the presentation that was made was wastewater. And as a result of that, we haven't actually started, but we are preparing to start that study. We I think today was the deadline for the for the study.
For water or wastewater?
Wastewater.
So the RFP closed several months ago. We have actually chosen the firm, only one firm applied.
Oh, very good. So that's happened. So that will start taking place right away, that study on wastewater up there.
In the new year, yes.
Right. And so we're excited about that. Hopefully we can get that done in 5 or 6 months. So in the midsummer sometime we can make those decisions. And then we also have the freshwater study, on domestic water that is getting ready to be started. We had our meeting on it yesterday, and we've made some pre-plans. So everything is in motion, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Harvey. It's going in the right direction. And so when people think we're getting the cart before the horse, I would say we're not. And if we are, it's like that far. I mean, it's happening as we speak. And we're just lining them up. So, yes. Thanks, Tammy. We appreciate your efforts.
Commissioner Harvey, any additional questions or comments?
Question. I've got a couple of comments,
Please do.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the one of the things that came across to me today through the public comment portion of the agenda was how respectful those presenters were. We have a body of commissioners that is truly, I think that they listen, but they try to respect also the public and do the best from what we've learned or what we've been taught in the past. From comments from Rick Southwick and Kirk Langford on different sides of the thing, but we're respectful for one another. Leah Shusman made some great comments. Shanna Francis did too. Mr. Morby, thanks to you too. You know, you're a name, having been associated with the county, you're a name that's been serving people of Weber County for decades, and just publicly wanted to recognize and thank you for that service, as are some of the aforementioned people who have too, a lot of things. Mr. Quinn, appreciate your comments with regards to the Legacy Mountain development, and there'll be more things coming there, but we're earnestly trying to do the right thing by the people who have the property there, and want to make sure that their property rights are protected, but the impact's minimal. I'm telling you from my seat right here, we absolutely will be looking at water, storm water, and also wastewater there so that that area is protected, and also liquefaction up there, which is huge, huge up there, liquefaction up there. So Lynn Croydon with the Wild Turkey Lodge, those were very impactful statements, and I appreciate your position and where you come from and what you've done too. And Sylvia, as always, for the others who are still listening online, which we're quite a handful, Sylvia is usually here every week, has a chance to listen in and take part and to be informed on almost everything. And gratitude goes a long ways. Thank you so much for who you are and all the things you've done to serve. You know, I love the fact that, Mr. Morby, you brought up that this type of thing's been going on for years, if not decades. I appreciate the timeline that you showed, Tammy and Charlie. Does everybody in planning have a last name ending in E? Charlie, Tammy, Ricky? I just wondered. Anyway, the fact that you've had, there are 11 opportunities to be heard, people to be heard on this issue. So I'm not in favor of tabling it and looking to it, looking down the road anymore. I think we need to make a decision. I want to tell you that we were successful more than 3 years ago to share that state hydrology study. I shared it personally with Kimball Wheatley and the GEM committee more than 3 years ago. So it's not a new thing. That even though some people are just hearing about it now, that study's been out for a while. We continue to pay a lot of attention to it. We're acting. A lot of people, most people, whether they were here or not, I can say, Mr. Chair, that they want government to do something. Boy, but it ought to be right in line with what they want, and that's not always going to be the case. And today may be exactly the case or not. I don't know, but we are doing something because, as you mentioned, Commissioner Jenkins, we need to get off the mark and move forward so that we can create some values and some definable assets so we can move forward with some of these other things. And this absolutely moves forward that hydrology study, helps us to more quantify and put some math numbers with that. So those are some of the options. As I've read all the pages, 40 or so pages of this, the ordinance. I hope many of you were kind enough to send us remarks online. By the looks of many of the remarks, though, like you said today, Chair Frohr, many people hadn't even read this. They'd heard some information, and a lot of it's inaccurate, which is unfortunate. I compliment the work that's gone into this. There are some great compromises in here that I think are fair. I wish that I was prepared today. I sat here wishing that I had the number of graduates from Weber High School in 1980 and 1990 in the year 2000 and 2010 and 2020, for 5 decades. And I wonder if the number of seniors are increased with all the new growth up there, or if they've really stayed the same, which indirectly has to do with nitrates in the water eventually when you get right down to it. So I'm going to look into that with the Weber School District, but I don't, as the services and the different things that are available up in the valley, there were only a couple of businesses when I was recreating up there in 1978 and 79 and 80 and 81. It's a lot more. There's a lot more businesses up there now. It requires service help, and many of the service help are not the people who want the service up there want to make a lot of them want the people to drive from another part of town to get there or have a longer commute. And I think there are other opportunities to have a shorter commute for those people. And so as we try to have a broad vision of what's going on up there, I love the owner-occupied component of this. I love that it doesn't include short-term rentals. That's a great component of this, and I love that there's some definites here that I think are good. So I think a function of what we've got here was what I will be in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, anything else? Charlie? So before I place the vote, I'd just like to make a final comment that obviously this has been one of those issues that has generated some interest. I've heard from a number of people, as we all have, that we were asked to delay, postpone, hold off on making this decision for whatever reason. I think their concerns, at least in my opinion, with the way this ordinance is written, those concerns are pretty much taken care of. Maybe not in their minds, but I think in terms of the general public. I've also heard from a number, probably equally number of people that say protect our private property rights, give us the ability to rent out our basement. We have a growing population in the valley that are, I'm going to call elderly, Commissioner Harvey. A lot of those homes were homes built to raise 8, 9, 10 kids. I see no harm in a person that would like to stay in the home but needs the help, not only financially, but for reasons that doesn't put a burden on the additional family members to rent out that basement. I have one up the street from me. I was asked this morning, how would I feel if one was in my neighborhood? Well, I have one in my neighborhood. It's up the street, approximately a quarter mile. It's been there for probably 5 to 10 years, if not longer. That gives my aunt the ability to have help when she needs it, and also takes a burden off the family members that they don't have to hire somebody to come in and take care. So there's a lot of positive reasons that this makes sense. It gives these elderly people and other people, private property owners, the ability to, as was mentioned earlier by our speaker, that as they pass on this to future generations, gives them the ability to pass on something in a worthwhile, consistent manner. So with that, any additional comments? I would now entertain a motion, which would be for ordinance, is that 27?
27.
Motion's in order.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Jenkins here. I will make a motion that we approve ordinance number 27 that deals with auxiliary dwelling units and approves them and puts them into code.
Great. We have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins.
Second with the question.
Go ahead.
I want to make sure that the wording in section 108-19.4 talked about, Charlie, what we talked about is absolute in there, and the attached with the breezeway, it's the relationship to single, all the things that I've got motioned or marked in here are included in that. And the second thing is I want to make sure that the grandfathered piece that was spoken of by Commissioner Jenkins earlier today is absolutely protected.
Yeah, so the grandfathered piece isn't going to be in this version of the ordinance. It's actually in Chapter 12 of Title 108 already in your code, which is called, it's defined as non-conforming buildings and non-conforming uses.
That's why I had to bring that up, because I didn't see it in here.
Yeah.
I'm concerned for those who would have that situation, and I wanted to make sure that those comments, I think that both of you were respected here. And so it's now, with my question, Mr. Chair, it's now part of this public meeting, and with your answer, I'm content with that. So second is a good.
Okay, we have a second for ordinance 27 from Commissioner Harvey. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Charlie, Tammy, appreciate. Rick, thank you for your efforts on this. I know it hasn't been an easy lift, but in my opinion, we ended up at a good spot. I think we've addressed the concerns, and the public has had numerous opportunities to have input. We appreciate your work. With that, let's go to our public hearing. I'd now entertain a motion to adjourn our public meeting and convene as a public hearing, commissioners.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We're now in a public hearing. Public hearing for consideration today is a request to rezone 4.57 acres located approximately 2137 North, 5500 East in Eden from AV3 to AV3 zone to CV2 zone. Mr. Ewert, this is something that's not new as well, right?
No, actually, we've been working on Old Town Eden for, I think I told you in one of our last meetings, the greater part of a year. I was informed by another planner in the office. It's actually been the greater part of 2 years. So this is a landowner who lives right in the area of Old Town Eden, right in the area where the general plan shows a village core or village center. And the landowner is looking to get some commercial rights associated with the property. Landowner's got a building on site already that they would like to use as a farm store to sell the products produced by other farmers and other individuals in the area. And so they would need the commercial zone for that. And in anticipation of that, they are thinking about the the street-oriented retail operations or retail buildings that can be created as we've been contemplating in that small area plan. But we're not working as fast on the small area plan, I think, as the landowner would want to see in order to actually execute on those rights. And so we've been working with the landowner to get some design standards put together that would complement what we're working on for that small area plan. Landowner's been very willing to do so, and we've worked on negotiation back and forth and a development agreement to document what those design standards are, and that's right in front of you. So let me just give you a very brief presentation here, just to run through basically what the Planning Commission saw for this. Let's see. I think I'm on screen share. Is that? Oh, there we go.
But we can see it up here.
Perfect. Okay. So we're talking about property that is on the western side of the Eden Park, just west of, or really fronting 5500 East Street, as you can see from the red polygon right there. The property just to the north of this red polygon here, right here, that's where the Blacksmith Village Phase 1 is. Property to the rear over here is Phase 2, where they've already got approval to build or to rebuild a historic cannery. So essentially move a cannery up there and build it on site. And as you can see here, this is existing zoning. So they've got the commercial zone here, and they would like to extend the CV2 zone southward. One of the concerns that I had as a planner looking at the CV2 zone is that there are a lot of automobile uses in the CV2 zone that just isn't conducive to the type of pedestrian-oriented retail storefront operations that we're hoping to capture in the Eden area plan, at least as for the areas that directly front the streets here. And the applicant has voluntarily agreed to eliminate those automobile-oriented uses and other types of uses from their allowance under this. So CV2 zone says you can have a used car lot, essentially. They're volunteering to say, no, we can't. And so some voluntary restrictions on their uses there so that they do get that pedestrian experience.
Well, Charlie, will that be attached?
Attached to the rezone? Yes. So
okay.
you're
so
actually,
if they choose to sell it, that won't.
That's correct. Yep.
Very good.
So you're looking at two different items here on your agenda. Number one is a development agreement, and in that development agreement is those use restrictions and the design standards, or excuse me, a zoning agreement as it's titled. The second thing is the rezone, and the order of operation is important. Approving the development agreement before approving the zone is important, but you could do it one right after the other as is on your agenda. So the proposed zone map would essentially look like this once adopted. I'm actually suggesting this little blip here where it's cut out for the road be extended all the way up, just so we've got zoning that actually goes to center lines of roads, just for formality purposes. This is an example of what could occur on the property given the design standards that we've mutually negotiated with the applicant. They're not required to build this, but they are required to build in accordance with those standards. So they've got to have a certain amount of window and door openings on the street level. The buildings need to be brought to the street front with a sidewalk out front. If there's a second level, they need to have a certain amount of window openings on the second level. The design, essentially the design theme, they've agreed to the Old West Minetown design, which they've agreed to a period between 1880 and 1910 architectural styling. So as long as they can meet those design standards and build a building that would otherwise have been constructed through that 30-year time frame, they're golden. And we kind of put some parameters on there because we haven't created more clear or concise design standards for other buildings in the area. As soon as we've done so through the Eden area plan and a new village zone, which we will be proposing to you guys within the next year, the applicant will have, through the development agreement, will have the opportunity to dissolve the development agreement and just come into compliance of the new village overlay zone. So the applicant, the rezone and the development agreement, the applicant has written into that development agreement the right to ask to be dismissed from the development agreement. If we've adopted a new village zone by that time, they just go into the new village zone. If we haven't by that time, they get reverted back to the AV3 zone, and we go back to the negotiation table on what kind of commercial design they may want to have, or by that time there may be some changes in the market or whatever, and we come back to the drawing table. One of the concerns that came up at the Planning Commission was staff had previously negotiated a 2-year term on this development agreement. After 2 years, it would expire, and the zone would just stay with the property. I felt like that was minimal risk because I do feel like we should have a village zone by that time. The concern is, what if we don't? And so the applicant, in working with the applicant, he said, you know what, why don't we just extend that to 10 years, give you plenty of time, plenty of buffer, so that you can get the county can get the village zone done. If we don't get the village zone done within the next 10 years, you probably should be able to have the CV2 zone at that point, because we've really extended that out, and he hasn't been able to do anything else except that. So that's what you'll see in that development, or that's what you have seen in that development agreement. This is just another view. We're really liking their proposal to put parking behind in the mid-block area. At some point in time, we will, as staff, be proposing some angled parking there out on the street. But there's got to be a lot of improvements done to that street first, and there's got to be some adjustments to the speed limit to do so, because right now you don't want people backing out onto a 45-mile-an-hour street. So that'll be, again, in due time. Just an example of what they've proposed as some of their street design. Let me see if I can move this out of the way so you can see it better. So just basically a base body and a cap for the building, and any horizontal lines would be broken up with some kind of vertical changes. Okay, public hearing is required for this, and so you'll want to go into a public hearing afterwards and take public comment. We did notice for that with the Planning Commission in pursuant to state code, and it has been posted on the commission agenda. You've got 3 options essentially here. Well, you got 6 options. 3 options for item 1, which is the zoning agreement. You can approve it, you can table it, or you can deny it. If you table it, let us know for what, and we'll make some changes and bring it back. And then item 2, same thing. You could approve the rezone, table the rezone, or reject it. My recommendation is that if you table or deny the development agreement, you give us some time. You table or deny the rezone, give us some time to work it out with the applicant. However, I think this is ready to go. I think it is in compliance with our general plan, and we as staff have recommended approval. Planning Commission recommended approval as well.
So both Planning Commission and staff recommend this?
That's right.
Got it. Questions, Commissioner? Does that conclude your presentation, Charlie?
That does. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioners?
Go ahead. Mr. Chair, I remember seeing this one even before, maybe a year or 2 ago, when this started in concept, and we acted on it then, and this is just a continuation. Keep moving forward. The water tower still is a need. I'm glad they've kept that in there. It just gives us a great feel, especially with that off-street parking, mid-block parking. Great thing, Charlie. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to the applicant for doing so. All voluntary, by the way.
Yeah, and Charlie, I just say congratulations. I like these development agreements. As you mentioned, predictable development outcomes. If we just rezone without predictable outcomes, i.e. development agreement, we don't know what we're going to get in a lot of cases.
That's right.
In this case, we can hold their feet to the fire. I think the 10-year requirement is valid, and it's great to see the applicant agree with that process.
Great, thank you.
So with that, any additional comments?
Nope.
Charlie? Commissioners? Let's go to public comments. Anyone in the chamber or online that would like to give comments on either the development agreement and or the rezone? Now's the time to do that. Go ahead, Mr. Morby. You've been here a long time, so you deserve to make a comment.
Commissioners, thank you. I've been watching this development a little bit, and I was expecting something more to happen. My comment would be just to make sure that if this goes through, that you may want to talk to the developer, or the individual, just to make sure that it's authentic. Authenticity is a big thing for me, and if it looks right for the valley and to make it look historical, I just want to make sure that it's accurate and authentic. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And the existing building, the old blacksmith shop there, and maybe you would agree with this, Mr. Morby, I think meets that criteria of being something that conforms with that period of time we're trying to replicate.
It's on the historic registry.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
As long as that continues, I'm assuming, Mr. Morby, you'd be okay with that. Great. All right, commissioners, no other.
Commissioners, we do have one comment on Zoom from Kirk Langford.
Okay, now's the time to hear that comment. Mr. Langford?
Well, thanks, gentlemen. This is a question for Charles. So, actually, two questions. Charles, is this, how will this rezoning come into play immediately? It will grant all the CV2 uses, or specifically reduce those down to the development agreement? And how will that tie into TDRs in the future for square footage if we were to, use those for a village build out, not just, a TDR for a unit, but like we have in the resort plan, TDR for a certain amount of square footage?
Charlie, can you answer that?
That's for Charlie up.
I can. Thank you. Happy to answer that. And thanks, Kirk, for the question. As far as timing goes, the development agreement would implement the use restrictions, voluntary use restrictions that the applicant has volunteered for. We have not, the developer hasn't contemplated, and we haven't contemplated residential units for this property yet. That doesn't mean that won't come forward in the future. Doesn't mean that an amendment to this agreement can't happen. But they simply just have not contemplated it in terms of asking for it at this time. If they do ask for it in the future, and we do make some amendments, or more likely when we adopt the village zone, there will very likely be a TDR component to that, provided we've got that TDR ordinance implemented by then. At that time, the applicant will be able to ask for residential units or equivalent residential units. To get right to Mr. Langford's question, how is this going to, or how could this work with the calculation of equivalent residential units? And I think, and Mr. Langford, let me know if I got your question wrong. I think what he's referring to is there is a provision in our general plan that does talk about the possibility of transferring residential development rights and converting them into commercial rights. And we haven't put a significant amount of contemplation into that yet. My suggestion is that as we look at the TDR ordinance, we focus on an element of simplicity in order to get the market to a predictable and stable level. When we put a lot of different variables in there, I wouldn't want to be a real estate appraiser trying to appraise what these what the comparables would be on these transfers if the transfer purpose is so dynamic and so variable that there's just no way to estimate that. So my recommendation would be, for the first little bit, we just focus on residential transfers, a residential unit for a residential unit. From there, I do think as the market stabilizes and as we are able to conceptualize how that market might move in the future, it might be a great opportunity to start looking for transfers from residential unit into hotel units, from residential unit into additional commercial real estate or floor area, et cetera. Right now, I'm not suggesting that we get into that level at this time.
Kirk, does that answer your question?
It does. I just would encourage you, though, Charlie, that I'm not necessarily respectfully agree that putting the foot in the water only for residential is the best way to go. I think I would even point out we've already in the resort plan allow for transferred for TDRs to be for square footage of commercial space. We're already doing it in the resort plan. And so, I'm just going to point out here, the more we rezone today, which, this is a nice project, and we don't have any TDR for commercial or square footage, you guys still there?
We're here. We can hear you.
We're just not implementing a very important part of a TDR ordinance, which is, to be used for square footage, lockouts, hotel rooms, et cetera, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying I think we should really, have good discussions about that, put, smart people in the room from the public and from the county and try to figure out how we make that work as quickly as we possibly can. Because it seems like we have a lot of stuff going forward right now. The car is not in neutral anymore. And so let's try to move that commercial part forward too. Just have one other question too, Charlie, if you could bring your map back up of that commercial zone. How will we identify the outskirts of that village and old town? When will the rezoning stop? Is it just going to continue to, balloon out?
Go ahead, Charlie.
You okay if I address that?
Yep, go ahead.
Great. Let me pull this back up again. It's a great question, and one thing that the general plan does tell us, in no mincing of words, is that there is no recommendation for commercial property to create strips or strip commercial properties along long expanses of a roadway. Roadways are especially easy to develop commercially because they're right there. They're right next to the road where the people are driving. And getting eyes on, you don't want to be out of sight, out of mind. You want to be right there on that road. If you've got a business that you're where you're selling your wares there. However, the general plan does tell us where these commercial areas should be, but it does do it in somewhat vague terms. So it says don't do strip commercial, and there's no way to mince words about it. But it doesn't say where to end. It does give us these commercial nodes, which tells us that the commercial area should be within about 1/4 mile walking distance from the center of wherever these villages are designated. It also tells us that we want to create small area plans that help us define where the center of these villages are. We're not quite there yet. We are working on the Eden Old Town area plan. We are moving forward on that to try and put some definition on the limits to that growth, especially in the context of a 30-year plan. You guys saw in a work session a little while back what the 30-year plan could be. From that 30-year plan, we'd like to back our way into the 10-year and the 5-year. So we kind of understand how this growth can be predictable in the area. As far as these boundaries go, if somebody right next door or to the south or to the east or west asks for more commercial, they have the prerogative to ask. At some point, we're going too far down the road and too far away from those village cores that the plan suggests. And so at some point, we'll want to say, no, this is too far. That's not in this case. I think this is exactly what we've been contemplating. In fact, this would be as far south as what your current proposal for Old Town Eden would be.
Right.
For commercial.
Okay, good. Kirk, thank you for your questions.
Commissioners, we also have a question from S. Clegg.
Okay, we'll take that. Charlie, you may want to.
I was trying to get off of mute. I'm Sean Clegg. I'm actually the representative for Horseshoe and Sunnyfield LLCs that has asked for this rezone. Just wanted to first say thank you for considering this item. We've appreciated working with Charlie and the Planning Commission throughout this process to get up to this point. Felt like we got into a really good spot. All of our prior development and our plans up to now to kind of address Mr. Morby's concern has really had an emphasis on time period correct. And we've spent a lot of money in order to do so. Spent a lot of money to get the blacksmith restored and preserved. And it's actually the only structure in the Ogden Valley that has the prestigious National Register of Historic Places designation on it. And you know, the money that we've put in so far, we wouldn't want to do anything to deter from that. And so we wanted to continue that. And we feel like what we've done with the restoration of the farm next door is in line with that as well. Cladding, you know, there was an old cinder block building. We clad it in brick that was salvaged from the old farmhouse that was there that was unfortunately unsavable. You know, we restored the old white barn and made it so it will stand the test of time as well. And so everything that we're doing there, we feel like is in line with everything that Charlie and the planning department have wanted within Old Town Eden there. And we're in support of that Old Town Eden plan and want to help out however we can to get those design standards, because we want quality design there. We feel like that's important for that area in the Old Town Eden. We don't want just any old commercial building to come in and to kind of deter from the charm that is there as of now. And that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, and appreciate the work you're doing up in Ogden Valley. Great project. Anything else, Charlie? Do we have anybody else online? Shelley?
No one else.
Okay, I don't see anybody else in the chamber for public comment, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene as a public meeting.
So move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, chair votes aye. Carries. We're now back in a public meeting to take action on the public hearing we just concluded. So the first item for consideration or action, commissioners, is a request for approval of a zoning agreement between the county, Sunnyfield LLC, and Horseshoe LLC to establish consideration for a rezone from AV3 to CV2 and create the predictable development outcomes for the community. This would be the development agreement.
I'd make a motion that we approve that development agreement. Let's see. Well, this is not an ordinance or a...
Not 11.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just make a motion that we approve that.
This would be the agreement. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Harvey. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. The development agreement has been approved. Charlie, let's now go to action item 512, which would be a request for approval of an ordinance rezoning 4.57 acres located at approximately 2137 North, 5500 East in Eden from AV3 to the CV2 zone. And this would be Ordinance 28, Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance number 28.
We have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Harvey. Roll call.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Zone change has been approved. Thank you again, Charlie, Rick, for the work.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Great job. For all those in attendance, thank you for being here with us, both online and in the chamber. Commissioner comments?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just make a little comment today.
Go ahead.
You know, there were quite a few people that wanted us to hold this today. Some of these changes that we made, even though they've been going on over 20 years, and you got to make change sometime. And so we have elected to do that by our actions today. And I suspect if there turns out to be an issue here, we'll come back and change some of this.
Absolutely.
But I feel very good about what we've done, the directions we've taken, and we're moving on. And that's this one thing about it. This has been a commission of action, and I appreciate that. I want you fellow commissioners to know it's been a commission of action, and I've enjoyed working with you in that regard. And since it's the end of the year and the last meeting we'll have this year, I want you to know how much I appreciate working with you both. You're wonderful fellers, and you've been a lot of fun to work with, and I've enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Harvey.
My piece. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just in conclusion, you know, this has been an interesting year. I just want to make a final remark. This won't be my final meeting, but probably the last commission meeting before we change chairs. It's been an honor to serve with you gentlemen. As we've said before, we've had some great discussions. We look at all these issues very thoroughly. We take our time. But at the same time, we're here to take action so that things don't drag on. I found in my experience as a politician, as an elected official, it's a lot easier to kick the can down the road and leave that up to somebody else to make the hard decisions. I don't believe for a minute that the public put us in these seats to kick the can down the road. I think they put us in here to make those decisions. And again, we saw what happened with this issue, that not in all cases everybody didn't be happy. But if we make the right decisions for the right reasons, we've done our jobs, Commissioner. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve with you folks. I look forward to the next at least 2 years, and we'll see what we can make of the next 2 years as we move forward. Hopefully it won't be quite as dramatic as 2020, but believe me, there'll be issues that we'll have to resolve and that will keep our attention. So I appreciate it again. Thank you very much. With that, I'd entertain a final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Non-debatable. Motion carries. Thank you.